Hi, welcome to this Ed puzzle on culturally responsive IEPs. This week we are working on doing root cause analysis, writing the participation sections, and supplementary aids and services section on the IEP for Maria. There is the option to earn extra credit through submitting Reflection 11. Some people have earned points already on that from coming to office hours earlier in the semester, so that's already going to be added as extra credit for you. But that option is there for you to complete Reflection 11 as extra credit rather than making that a requirement. Next week is fall break, so there's no new content and nothing posted on Canvas for next week. When we met last week, 17 responses were entered into the Google form to give course feedback. Lauren Zepp took those responses, reviewed them, found some themes, and then summarized what those themes were. So I'm going to share some bullet points that reflect themes in that course eval feedback about what is working well. Feedback on assignments is helpful and given quickly. Assignment directions and due dates are clear. The course Canvas page is organized and clear. There's a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous activities, and the course is flexible and also feels manageable. Things that are not working well are weeks without a synchronous lecture is harder. Readings are long and challenging. Assignments are not explained in advance enough in advance. And confusion about what to do each week. The feedback on changes, so changes that students can make, changes that the instructor can make, include things like being more organized, staying on top of assignments, taking breaks during reading, paying attention to instructions and feedback, participating and asking questions. Recommendations were for the instructor to give clear feedback, be clear about the weekly plan, continue to be flexible, and use more student-to-student discussion rather than written reflections. So I appreciate the feedback that I received, and I want to use it to make changes that seem meaningful. One change that I'll offer is the option for the 3 weeks that remain on the calendar. I'll open Zoom to have the possibility for you to come on during the 5:45 time slot on Wednesday nights if you want to use that time to work with structure and get feedback on the projects that you're working on. Another is that I'll add additional time on Zoom for support outside of that Wednesday night. I'll just ask if you can provide the best days and times in this Ed Puzzle feedback so that I can select what those additional hours would be. I'll send out on Sundays an announcement and an email about the week ahead so that the expectations and format are clear at the start of the week. And I can't change the student-to-student discussion in place of reflection, so I've changed that reflection number 11 to extra credit. I am open to other suggestions, so if other things stand out to you, please put them in the Ed Puzzle response. So Canvas for week 12 has a number of files that I've added and videos that complement those files. 2 of them will be important for you to download as files and or watch as videos. The first is the expanded file for Maria's case, and the second is the initial IEP for Maria. So you're writing right now the annual review for her 4th grade school year. The initial file is her 3rd grade IEP. It has a lot of information that will be helpful to you, because some pieces on the IEP, particularly some of the pieces we're working on in this ed puzzle, won't change drastically from year to year for Maria. When you finish working on the draft tonight, you have the option, it's not required, but you have the option to submit changes to your draft on the week 12 participation assignment. So if you feel like you've made enough changes to it and you want to get feedback, go ahead and upload it. If you haven't, that is okay, and I'll open up and look for the chance to review feedback after fall break. So last week we worked on pages 1 through 4 and then parts of page 5 and 6 on the IEP for Maria. I've done some work to change and make the current level of performance section less muddy by providing that initial IEP with a more detailed current level of performance section for Maria. What you're going to do tonight is the rest of page 5 and 6, and then the final 3 pages of the IEP document. So let's start with what's on the rest of page 5, which is Part E, Effects of the Disability. Now, on the Wisconsin DPI website, there are IEP resources, and the process for writing a college and career-ready IEP, that's what the CCR IEP stands for, is broken down into discrete steps. Step 1 would be figuring out the current levels of performance. And for this project, for this case, you can read the initial IEP for Maria and the case study data to be able to capture what Maria's current level of performance related to academic achievement and functional performance are. The next step is step 2, which is broken down into 3 phases. So you'll find the file on Canvas that has Maria's current performance in reading. Notice that there are multiple assessments, explanations of what the scores mean, expectations of where she should be grade level wise versus where she is performing. I've added the Common Core standard that may be relevant for crafting a reading comprehension goal for Maria. But we're going to use that in step 1 to think about what Maria's current performance level is. And we're doing that like as a reporter would. The next step is to identify how the student's disability affects academic achievement and functional performance. And there are 3 parts to this step. 1 is to document observations of the effects of the student's disability on access, engagement, and progress. 2 is to analyze root causes. 3 is to synthesize and summarize disability-related needs. Now we're going to break those down as we go. So step 1 was writing the current level, or in this case, reviewing the current level to have the what in mind. And then we're going to move into these 3 parts for step 2. So the effects part is having us figure out how is the disability observed in its effect on access, engagement, and progress. And then we can include additional observations to help explain or understand special factors and concerns. So we're thinking of the effect on access, engagement, and progress here. What are we seeing? What are the results? What are the concerns? Does what we're seeing occur everywhere? Here's an example. In the initial IEP for Maria, we could say she was reading something like 27 words correct per minute, but the benchmark was 102 for the mid 3rd grade level. We might also note that her independent, or I think it actually should say instructional reading level was I, but the expected level was O. So we're seeing that there's quite a discrepancy between where she's performing and where she's expected to perform. She is comprehending grade level text when using a text reader and accessing picture supports. Her oral language comprehension is near the grade level expectations, and we might make special considerations to the level 4 developing column or rows on the WIDA access chart in her case to explain where she's falling for listening on the language proficiency test. She excels in hands-on classes, labs, specials like PE and music. So those are the things we observed, and now the how part of this is how is the disability having this effect? We're observing that she does not read or comprehend grade level materials independently. She does not read with sufficient speed, accuracy, expression, and she's having some difficulty completing assignments that involve reading in school and when doing homework. So that would be, here's what we're seeing, here's how it has this impact. And in this 5th page, the sort of bottom portion that remains, we're going to answer question 1 by writing a narrative, and we'll answer question 2 simply by checking yes, no. On the initial IEP for Maria, for question 2, I selected yes because the disability adversely affects her progress toward meeting grade level reading standards, and that will be consistent from 3rd to 4th grade, so we can check yes. The task now is to write the narrative to describe how the student's disability affects access, involvement, and progress in the general curriculum, including how the disability affects reading. That's what's listed on the IEP form. Here's an example of what a narrative looks like. In this example is posted on Canvas from last week. I believe the file is called something like Charisse Mediocre IEP. So here's an example narrative of the effects of the disability narrative. Charisse receives services under the disability category of other health impairment due to an ADHD diagnosis. Her ADHD evidences itself in a number of ways, but 2 characteristics stand out: her difficulty with focus and organization. When reading occurs in large group or independent reading circles in the regular class, Charisse has great difficulty staying on task. She says the reading is too hard. The text is often about 2 or 3 grade levels above her instructional reading level, and her decoding skills are developing, but still fall short of the analysis skills needed to attack multi-syllabic words. When working in groups or independently, her organization skills make it difficult for her to participate fully, like figuring out how the worksheet's laid out, finding the needed supplies, note-taking, referring to notes. So what that statement does is it shares the observer how does this disability have this impact on her access and progress. We're going to craft a very similarly structured narrative, but add content relevant to Maria. Now, in the initial IEP for Maria, I did not provide the narrative because I want you to try drafting this and then getting feedback on it. So one way to start it out could be Maria is an emergent bilingual Spanish-English student who receives special education services under the disability category of, and then see if you can remember what her disability is, and then type that in Edpuzzle. You'll also write it in your effects of the disability narrative. Her disability evidences itself in a number of ways. That's language exactly like we saw in Charisse's mediocre sample. For example, and then you can elaborate on the what for her challenges with reading comprehension and reading fluency, and also elaborate on the what for her challenges with written expression. So that's kind of telling us the what of the current level, and now we want the how. These challenges lead to the following effects on engagement, access, and progress in the general curriculum. So I'm giving one idea that we would want to capture is that she does not read with sufficient fluency and accuracy to support comprehension. We could expand that, that she does not read on grade level text with sufficient fluency and accuracy to support comprehension. There should be at least 2 other hows that you add to this list here when you draft that narrative for Maria. Once you've drafted the effects of the disability, we're going to move into the root cause analysis, and we're analyzing why. Why is the student struggling to meet standards? Why is the question here, and the recommendation is to try to ask why 5 times to dig really deep into what the cause might be, looking carefully at one reason at a time. So for example, student does not independently read grade level text. So we've got why 5 times. Why don't they read independent grade level text? Because they get frustrated when they're required to read independently. And then we'd ask why again, trouble gaining meaning from written material. And then we could ask why again. Well, reading fluency is insufficient to read that grade level text. Why is that insufficient? Because they're having difficulty decoding, and then that makes it harder to read and understand. And why are they having difficulty decoding? Well, there's difficulty with phonological skills that affect decoding. So we've really drilled down by asking why each time to kind of remove another layer and get at the root of the cause of the effect of that disability. Once we do the root cause analysis, then we can name the disability-related needs. So in our root cause analysis, we're asking why at least 5 times, and then our disability-related needs is kind of a way of synthesizing what we've learned from doing that and summarizing in a succinct way. On the IEP for Maria, the initial one, I just very briefly put a broad kind of tag of what the area might be: reading comprehension, reading fluency, written expression. You're going to expand this into a summary of disability-related needs. And a recommended sentence stem here is the student needs to either develop, improve, increase X area, skill, or behavior related to the root cause so that the student can Y, which will have the effect of addressing access, engagement, progress, and then lead to improved outcomes by the next IEP review date. So let me put that into context with an example. One of Maria's disability-related needs statements could look like, Maria needs to blah, 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 develop, improve, increase the area of skill so that she can, let's read it in this context. Now I think this one is more helpful and clear. Maria needs to improve her skills for blending and segmenting multisyllabic words so that she can fluently read grade level text. So if I were to drill down and ask why over and over again about Maria's reading difficulties, this might be where I'd end up with a disability-related need. She does not read fluently. She does not read fluently. What's the cause? The cause is difficulty segmenting multisyllabic words. So we could craft that in the statement that would look like a disability-related need. I listed fluency second, and I'll keep a consistent order to that, so I just showed how this could look on your draft with this being a disability-related need. You'll add another statement for 1 and another statement for 3, addressing reading comprehension when you drill down, and addressing written expression. The next section of the IEP that you're going to fill out is a pretty simple, straightforward one. It's going to be consistent likely with what you see on the initial IEP. So it's participation in general education curriculum. We are not using any alternate curriculum or alternate standards, so we're selecting the top option here. Student participates full-time in general education curriculum. There would not be a likely reason to have that change for this 4th grade IEP for Maria. Now, under program summary, we'll document supplementary aids and services. I'm going to describe a little bit of what these sections are, and you'll come up with examples that you can keep ones from the initial, change them, add to them. The first thing that you'll do is you'll describe what the support is, and then you'll explain the conditions in which she'll use the support. Do not use as needed. So on Edpuzzle, you can tell me what should you not use. Location, you'll specify where, and you should avoid putting like all settings. The duration, you can just leave the IEP term, which is a full calendar year, and then you can align with those disability-related needs and IEP goal statements that we'll address next. So you'll likely consistently use 1, 2, and 3, depending on whether you're providing a support related to reading or writing. The 1, 2, and 3 represent those areas that you're documenting under disability-related needs. For program summary, you can specify what kind of instruction she'll receive. You can keep this consistent. You can change it. I think the IEP at a glance form that's on Canvas, I put different frequencies, so you can say that's the 4th grade service model and use the one from the IEP at a glance. It is really hypothetical, but what you need to have is a frequency and amount. Sometimes these are slashed together into one column, a location of where the service will be delivered, the duration of the IEP term, and then specifically which IEP goal that service will target. Under related services for Maria, it wouldn't make sense to add any new players unless you're going to expand on a possible need for social work and invite the social worker and craft a goal for that. So if we're keeping this academic, you can consider adding the supportive and assistive technology service provider because she is using a range of high and low assistive tech. Under supports for school personnel, we can leave none needed because there is nothing unique equipment-wise, training-wise that someone would have to be familiar with in order to work with Maria's disability-related needs. The next section under student participation, you can decide if you want to keep the same service placement where she'll be spending some time in a resource room, sometimes in a general education classroom. If you want to keep it that way, then you can just leave the content as is. If you want to change to full-time, then you can remove this content and just select full-time in the general education environment. The very last page then that you'll fill out is participation in physical education. And as far as we know, we have nothing to document for a rationale for adapted PE, so we're selecting general physical education for Maria.